We'd like to welcome each and every individual to EQ for CPAs and those we serve podcast. And we have been going through how to become a problem solver. And there are 12 things that Bill and Shannon and Misty have come up with and their team on how to become great problem solvers. And so we've gone through the base lesson of it, then we've gone through communication. Today, we're going to be looking at asking key questions. So Bill or Misty or Shannon or anyone who's joined us for the live podcast today, any thoughts, questions, or like why is the ability, the art of asking questions, why is that so valuable, so important?
Well, I think it relates to getting to know the person, what their moral compass is, where they are in life, and everybody has needs. Yesterday, I met with a client, and he was talking about how his wife had stage 4 cancer, and through divine intervention and some other type of not usual treatment, and a few months ago, they couldn't find any cancer in her body. And then being able to pass that information on to other clients, that they're running into the same situation with family members. And, it's not just being a CPA and helping people with their tax return and books, it's helping them through life.
And this is where I talked to a brand new CPA that Jason introduced me to out in Pennsylvania. And he and his wife, they have their first child has, I can't even pronounce it, can't even come close to pronouncing it, but severe disability where she can't move, like, 2.5, I think 2 years old, 3 years old, and can't move anything, but she's very cognitive and very much aware. And he said that's even harder. And so, this guy is just interesting. He's just an interesting guy. I've never met there's 2 strange CPAs in the world. I won't say Bill's one of them and this guy's another one, but they're just like, they care. Like they care so much where they find out that kind of information. And he was telling a story of one of his new clients, and he spent 2 hours with him on the upfront and found out that the business model was broken of this new client. Like he said he's paying his labor, I don't know, $45 an hour, and he's making $46 an hour. And it's like, he said, the business owner said, why didn't my other CPA go ahead and work for him for years? You sit down and in 2 hours, you see stuff that my other CPA never even saw. And he said he was working for a CPA firm in the past and, before, and got in trouble because he started asking, questions and started getting to know the client and really digging in. And so he says, wow, I'm going to start my own CPA firm. So again, you all can jump in. There's not a lot of silence on the podcast. And so, I've got a lot to go. I've got a lot that I could share, but often the person who's talking the most has the least to share, and the person who's talking the least has the most to share. So are we masters in the art of asking questions? Do we know that when we and others around us, that we usually know the solutions to our problems, but we're just not asking the best question? So imagine if we were to learn how to use the flawless thinking model to discover a better question to ask. It's really easy, but it's not. And so when we look at the flawless thinking model on the left-hand side, that took over 40 years to develop. And right at the top, the center of the entire model is a question mark. Like that's like everything. And then right here to the lower part of the pyramid is curious. So why is it that children, young children, learn so much so fast? Like Bill and I both have grandchildren. Just last Friday, I went ahead and said to my children, I said, hey, how about if Grandpa takes, all the grandkids? They're like, well, that's 8 of them. I'm like, well, yeah. And they're like, are you sure, Dad? I mean, like, as long as the parents aren't around and grandma's not around, and as long as I get them, I'll be fine. The grandkid, because they're so curious and they're so eager and it's really cool. So curious questions. It's almost like becoming like a child again. It's almost like, why do things work? Why do people think the way they do? Why are things functioning, not functioning? And I feel bad for CPAs because there's, nothing against the government. They're just making it hard. Like all these rules and regulations and all these things, and it's changes in the RS and it's all this stuff. And it's like we feel as CPAs, we feel I don't really have time to get to know my client. But maybe it's I don't have time not to get to know them. Like I have to get to know them. And so the flawless thinking model, there's 26 or 27 major elements and then thousands and tens of thousands of sub elements. And so Misty and Shannon, I would rather have them talking than me because they're the problem solvers, but they're kind of shy maybe.
Well, Shannon is out right now, I believe,
Okay.
because she has tickets to the Beyonce concert tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. my my grandkids aren't at that level yet, but when they are, grandpa's going. Like grandpa's going. He's gonna study. Why do you like this? Like, why are you in like why? Like, what is the culture today? So again, it's curious questions. Like as a dad, I might have a different response to things, but as a grandpa, I'm like, they're not my kids. So you know what? I can do crazy things, like one of the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old, she wanted to crawl on top of the playhouse. And mom said no, and she couldn't. And then she kept pushing mom, and she says, well, grandpa's in charge. If grandpa's in charge, well, for sure, like get up there. And she just rolled her eyes and she's like, really, Dad? Like, I don't know, you said I was in charge. Like it's fine, it's not 20 feet off the air. So curious questions. Now when we look at this, so Misty, you're free to jump in. You have people would resonate a lot more with you than me, and so I don't know, maybe I just Misty and just wait.
Yes, sir.
So why are you so good at asking questions?
I don't know. I'm one of those that ask the questions so I can learn. I feel like I'll learn more the more questions I ask.
And do you remember like when everybody else turned into an adult and you continued to maintain your childlike wonderment? Do you remember why you never grew up and you just continued to have the childlike wonderment? Was there anything growing up, your parents or an experience or something that you said, hey, I need to continue to learn, I need to continue to grow? Anything come to mind, Misty?
It just seems the older I get, the more I become wanting to ask more questions. Like I look back in my past and I wish I would have done things differently. Like I don't know how to really answer this. Just I don't know.
Well, I know what you're saying, I think, because it's like it seemed, do you know that do you know how unusual you are, Misty?
No, sir.
Oh my gracious. You're adorable. Like, I just want to hug you now, because most people, like, I'm 59 years old, and it seems like most people, when we get older, the natural inclination is to, it seems like it, I think it's I think the natural is to, but somehow people get all messed up as we get older, we start asking less questions and start telling people more. And it's like, I think what you're saying is, when you look back in your life and maybe some of the choices that you made, maybe you're like, if I'd have just asked these questions, like maybe if I ask better questions now, maybe my life will be better. Maybe my children's life will be better for, Bill and I, maybe our grandchildren's. If we can get our grandchildren to ask questions, maybe that their parents didn't ask,
Yes.
it's like, hey, like, let's ask these questions. And Daniel, my oldest grandson, he's 11, and he was at an event with me in Annapolis. And he went around the room. He's 7 years old, and there's clients. Jorge from San Antonio, he flew in, and there were people from all over the country, and they were in. And he's 7 years old, and he's going around. He's got this little notebook. He's going around asking everybody, and these are total strangers. They don't know who he is. He doesn't know who they are. And he goes around. And he says, "Mr. Jorge, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing now, like in any area of your business or life?" And Jorge looks at him and says, "Daniel, that is a great question. Like, how did you come up with that question?" And Daniel, at 7 years old, he says, "My grandpa, he says it's a very important question to ask." Like, and so I think if we don't, as we grow older, if we don't become more curious, we become cynical, because we see so much that's just not right, so much that's messed up. But when we ask questions, we're not judging, we're curious, like, why do people think like this? And so there's something inside of you, Misty, that, like, we want to somehow reverse engineer that. Not on this podcast, probably, but on another podcast, I'd like to go deeper with that and look at some of the, if you're open to dig deeper into your life and say, like, what was the turning point for Misty? Like Nicole, she works with Tanglewood Conservatory. She's 28 years old, married now. And she started an internship with Tanglewood when she was 19 years old. And she's become like a daughter to me. I absolutely adore her. She's amazing. What a magical woman. Like, she's just so, and I told her when she was 19, I said, "Nicole, don't ever grow up. Don't ever grow up, kiddo." And in the last 8 years, 9 years, I think there's been 2 or 3 times I said, "Nicole, you're growing up. I told you not to." You have to be humble. You have to go ahead and be curious. And she's adorable. I mean, just like it's just amazing. And so, like, 3 things that I've noticed that I think prevent people from asking questions. Number 1 is entitlement. This would be good to write down. Number 1 is entitlement. As soon as we become entitled, we stop asking questions because we're so consumed with, I deserve this, and we become self-absorbed, self-consumed. Number 2 is self-righteousness. We think we're really good. We think we're really amazing. We think we're good people. We think a whole lot of ourselves. Like, I am a really good person. I'm a really kind person. I'm a really generous person. I'm a really this and this and this and this. So we become self-righteous. And the third, and when we're self-righteous, we don't need to ask questions. We don't need to ask questions. Why? Because I'm a really good person, and I've got this stuff figured out. I've got life figured out. I've got marriage and kids and God and spiritual and everything. I've got it all figured out. Self-righteousness is just, it just crushes the ability to ask questions. The third is victimhood. Victimhood just destroys our ability to ask questions like I'm a victim. Like it's somebody else's fault. Like the reason I'm this way is because of this and this and this and this and this. And it's always somebody else's fault. And so when we look at the flawless thinking model, it actually is really easy. At least on the surface it is. It's curious questions, ask curious questions. How do we go ahead and prevent entitlement? How do we prevent self-righteousness? And how do we prevent victimhood? I believe it comes back down to thankfulness, right in the center, right down here, right above present, thankful. Thankfulness, no matter what happens to us in life, if we aren't thankful for all of the things that we have, we slip into entitlement, self-righteousness, and victimhood. And as soon as we're there, it's an addiction. It's like drugs. It's like alcohol. It's like pornography. It's like maybe shopping or eating or, or praise. Like we have to be praised by people. And so we fall into that if we're not thankful. And then over here on the left-hand side is humble. Like I would think that the more we know we don't know. I can't wait for you guys all to come visit us in October at Oktoberfest. We got a camp now. So we met a guy, he's 39 years old. He's Amish. And man, this guy, he's asking questions that, man, I have not heard people asking these kind of questions. He's 39. And I said, Paul, like, what happened? You're 39. 39-year-olds don't ask the question. 49, 59, 69, 79. Like nobody's asking these questions. He said, Mark, when I turned 30, I had a wrestling with God. And he said, everything changed. And I'm like, what? I'll get him on the podcast sometime. And so he said, but what I feel really bad about is I wasted so much of my life. Like, stuff at 39 that people in their 70s don't know. But I'm thinking 39, shoot, you're young. But when it hit him at 30, he said, in my 20s, I didn't realize certain things. And so it's learning to be humble. And then when we are humble, we're thankful, we're curious, we ask questions, we see, think, and do differently. We see, think, and do. We think, see, and do. We do see and think, see. These three are, a lot of times to go ahead and ask questions, we think, well, we got to think about it before we do it. No, sometimes we have to do. We just have to do. We just have to do. And then we'll see something different. Sometimes you got to see things like, my grandkids don't go out in the parking lot. You got to look both ways all the time, even if mom and dad don't. Like grandpa's always looking both ways. You got to look both ways. And so these three things are interchangeable. And then when we look at the past and the present and the future, one of the things that bugs me about, go ahead, Bill.
I think we have to do self-evaluation and do a self-check every so often as well. Because if we don't, then we can become that, victimhood or self-righteous. We have to be able to evaluate where we are and see, I do make flaws. How do I correct that flaw? And it's just like probably Paul was thinking, and he asked more questions because he's done some self-evaluation. He wrestled with God there for a while.
This self-awareness, self-awareness, as we get older, we should be, the more we know, the more we should know we don't know. This is the more successful. Like, it was funny, my youngest son, I was talking to him, and he and I are doing a podcast. He's 21. He struggled with anger so much of his life and addictions. And he has an amazing podcast, amazing story. And he's the one that kind of brought these things to life. He said, Dad, I realized how entitled I am. Like, and so being self-aware, constantly evaluating, I agree with that. It's so important. So in the past, like when we go to seminars, we often learn things we shouldn't and don't learn things we should. Like the Life GPS mobile app through Life Masteries Institute. If you're not part of that, I mean, it's free. It takes 17 minutes. You want to be part of that. I mean, join Bill's channel because there's some crazy stuff. But my wife and I, 39 years of marriage, and we go to a seminar, and I think the seminar is great. And she thinks the seminar is great. And then we go home and our marriage gets worse after the seminar. Why? Because I'm hearing things in the seminar that I shouldn't hear, and I'm not hearing things that I should hear. And she's hearing things she shouldn't hear, and she's not hearing the things. What do I hear? Well, I'm a driver. I'm a pyramid in a cube. So what am I hearing? I'm hearing that she needs to be more disciplined. She needs to have more planning. She needs to have better follow through. She needs to have more integrity to do what I'm hearing everything for her. What is she hearing? Well, she's amiable and expressive and some analytic. And so she's hearing that Mark is hearing that he should be more loving to me. He should be more gentle to kids. He should be this. He should be this. He should be this. And I'm like, this marriage seminar is gonna make our marriage so great because she's hearing everything she should, but she doesn't. And I'm hearing everything I should, but I don't. So if we're not aware of the self-awareness, so what's truth? She and I both are truth, but we're seeing for her, she's seeing for me, we're not seeing for one another. This happens all the time. And then we learn things from the past that we shouldn't, and we don't learn things we should, which is why it's heartbreaking as a dad when you see your children or your grandchildren make the same core mistake. Like when you look at these 12 things, like share this with other people, this podcast. Like learning at a core level, not at a symptom level. So the attentive listener, most people, when they'll breeze through these 12 things, and I know how to communicate. Do you? Like, I know how to ask questions. Do you? Well, I'm an active listener. Are you? And so one of the reasons that I love to do these is because I'm like, man, my youngest son said, Dad, do you know that people are really jealous of you? I'm like, they are. What do you mean? He's like you do well financially and you have all this free time and you've been married for 39 years and you have kids and grandkids. And I go, oh, I do have a lot to be thankful for. But boy, you look at my life and some of the stuff I've gone through, and it's like, wow, how can I help my kids and my grandkids and others not go through? Like Misty, just feel her energy. If you just like active listening, like I am so interested in her story and what she learned from her story. And maybe if she told her story, maybe that would help some of my kids, because maybe they'll hear something from her that they're not hearing from Dad. And then we have the present and we have the future, and down deep, you can't even see it. It's feelings. And Bill, I'll never forget when I said, Bill, talking about feelings, he said, man, Mark, I find when there's feelings, it's a bunch of self-centered. And I'm not going to lie to all of you. Like, my youngest brother and my other son said to me, Mark, your feelings are important. I'm like, really? And so I'm doing a little experiment now. And I'm telling you, the more my feelings are important, the more addicted I get to my feelings. And I realize how important I am. And I get sucked into that world of entitlement and self-righteousness and victimhood. So I don't know. Feelings, I'm not saying feelings aren't important. I'm saying that they reveal something, but often not what we think they reveal. They don't reveal far more about our own heart, I think, than the heart of other people. And then there's truth on here. So we'll probably be referencing this, over the overall 12 of these things by asking questions like, listen to small children ask questions. They're incessant. It's grandpa, why is this? Grandpa, why is this? Grandpa, why is this? Grandpa, why is this? Start to get in that mode of asking questions. Why? Bill, any closing comments or thoughts you have?
No, it's a deep subject.
Right? What we cover in our podcast in a very short period of time, this spins like whoa, what is going on here? Misty, any closing comments or thoughts you have?
No, sir.
Anybody, I want you to think more because I need more of you and everybody else, especially my wife and kids. They'll listen to these podcasts, Misty, if you're talking. If I'm talking, they won't. And I want them to listen because they need to be better problem solvers. So I need you to participate more. Can you do that in the future, Misty?
I will do my best.
You will do awesome. And I appreciate it. Anybody else have any other questions or thoughts for today's before we wrap it up? All right. If you're listening to the rebroadcast of this, couple of things. One, share it with 2 other people. I don't care who you share it to. Share it with a spouse, a kid, grandkids. Share it with your customers. Share it with, vendors. Share it with 2 others. Share it with your pastor or people, your neighbors. Share it with strangers. I don't care who it is, because this really needs to be shared. I mean, it really, really does. If you have any questions on anything we covered, definitely call the person who invited you to participate and thank them and say you're going to share it with 2 other people for sure. If you have any questions, connect with them, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300, outside the US 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.